pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll with planet. Flight downside of speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, good afternoon and good evening, or whatever time it is around the world where you are joining us. I am Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor right here at NASASpaceflight, and we are here because Starship SN10 is about to do something cool, hopefully. Hopefully we will be headed for a static fire of the 3 Raptor engines that are installed in the base of this vehicle. We do have some tank farm activity, including the Recondenser, so things are definitely picking up pace here at Boca Chica after what was a frigidly cold week last week at the Texas space site. Joining me today on the stream, we have Stephen Marr. Stephen, how's it going, man?
Good. How's it going, everybody?
Right. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Ready to see this thing light up.
Right? It should be a good show. This is a pretty critical test, and it's always fun to watch testing happen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Stephen Marr is joining me. That is his Twitter handle up there at Space Coast Steve. You can see him with another rocket, and I was also posing with another rocket earlier. Also joining us a little bit behind the scenes is Michael Baylor, who is producing our live stream this evening. Michael, thank you so much. I don't know if you're on comms.
I am, and hopefully we will finally see Starship SN10 static fire. This was supposed to happen a couple of weeks ago, I think, at this point, but they did have to figure out whatever happened with SN9, take the corrective actions that were necessary, and then they got hit with that bad weather in Boca Chica. They've also been doing a lot of work at the launch pad with the orbital testing activities, so lots of activity in Boca Chica, just not anything related to SN10 as of recently until today. But as you can see live on your screen right now, that methane recondenser really going crazy, which means that they are starting up the countdown. And based on our past testing experience, it usually takes between 34 to 36 minutes or so from the recondenser starting to the static fire happening. So based on that recondenser starting about 4 or 5 minutes ago now, it's probably about 30 minutes or so until a static fire test. But as of always, this is a new test vehicle, so perhaps the timeline for SN10 could be different if they make any changes. So don't read too much into that timeline, but 30 minutes is an approximate that you can use to figure out how long it will be until the static fire happens.
I don't know. I think if this whole NASA spaceflight thing doesn't work out, you guys might want to try forensics or something.
Well, we definitely win thanks to Adrian for spreadsheet competitions. So,
yeah.
Yes.
with almost no information, given by SpaceX except for, like road closures. That doesn't even come from SpaceX, but y'all have been able to put together this chart. And actually, I'm looking at something on my screen that helps me kind of know when everything goes. But it's really incredible that we're able to kind of guess when certain things are going to happen just based on like when the condenser starts or the skirt vent.
And I gotta think too, like this is part of the fun for SpaceX too, watching us all figure it out.
Because I think we've heard that like some of their employees actually will watch the stream just to get a different perspective, right?
I definitely know some have watched it. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we've gone through the various events. Yeah. SN1 all the way to, man, we're at 10 now, and one was like a year ago. It's incredible.
Yeah.
The things that they're going at. But before we get too far into the stream, I do want to very much thank Mary. This view is brought to you by Mary at Boca Chica Gal, the one and only. So very much thanks for Mary. She's been out there today, not only prepping for this event with the static fire, but she has also been all around the production area as well today, and everywhere that she was allowed to be filming and documenting everything. So it's been a full day for her, and thank you very much from all of us for being out there and bringing us these epic shots of SN10, which should be fueling here pretty soon. And yeah, so we'll run through all of that, but like Michael was saying, maybe like 30 to 45 minutes. Here's another angle now. From one of the robotic cameras, the DOS robot army that has gone out. So yeah, just a little bit different perspective, but we will be covering this here as we head toward the static fire, hopefully here, of SN10. Let me go ahead and pop on over here. Asimo308 with a $50 super chat saying, "Here we go again," with an exclamation point and a heart. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that support. Tyler Vandekamp, hello NSF family, loving the streams as always, watching this and 3D printing a Merlin 1D engine. Keep up the good work.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes.
How big is this Merlin 1D engine you got over there?
Thank you. That was going to be my question, because my first thought was, oh, printing a model. And I was like, wait, like we 3D print rockets now. Like,
right, yeah, there's no telling it.
It's not necessarily small. I like it.
Yeah.
But Taylor, thank you so much. I think I accidentally mispronounced your first name there earlier. Taylor, thank you so much for that $5 super chat. Here's another $2 super chat from the Starhopper fan club from Moldy Space Industries, regular on our stream. Welcome aboard, Moldy Space Industries. And Nathaniel Sullivan with another $2 here in South Padre, drove all the way down from Maryland. Very nice. So
Wow.
a bit of an excursion there, right, to go see SN10. Well, I mean, depending on how long you've been in Texas, either my condolences on the weather, or hopefully you'll get to experience non-winter conditions since you're from Maryland and we'll be going back there. And Maryland just had a winter snow extravaganza as well.
Yeah, they didn't go to Texas looking for snow, that's for sure.
Yeah, but you could now, right?
Yeah.
but in all seriousness, to everyone in Texas who was affected by the really bad weather last week and the really freezing conditions, we do hope you're all doing well, especially to the many who are still without power and still without running water from everything. We do hope you're all doing well with that.
It was so cold, we had ice freeze around the internal part of the robot, so we were having trouble moving our robots at one point. They were like frozen stuck, but luckily the sun has come out and South Texas has thawed.
Yes, indeed, because it is not every day you get snow that far south. So
yeah, you know, it got so cold here in Florida that I had to put my t-shirt back on.
You know, I got lovingly made fun of because I was wearing shorts on the Perseverance stream.
Right. Yeah, we're sorry, but it's just the way it is here. Hey, it gets chilly at night, okay? It does.
Indeed. And well, it does get cold here in Florida, like legitimately cold, not Florida cold, like legitimately cold. It does freeze here.
Yeah,
sometimes, yeah. Ezra here with a good question, and Michael, I think this is one primarily for you because I believe the answer to this question is, how can you identify the recondenser? And I know there's a specific component to that, but visually this has really been something that we've that's been based on our observations, right? And you've been a part of that for the longest, Michael. So can you talk a little bit about like what the process is of how we figured out what these things were and how we identify them?
So the recondenser is located behind those three black vertical water tanks you can see just to the bottom left of Starship SN10 right now. So unfortunately there's so much stuff to the pad these days, it's kind of hard to get a shot at a recondenser, but when they first installed it, you could see it pretty clearly. It's not actually that big, it's just a small physical object that condenses the methane, the gaseous methane, back into a liquid form using liquid nitrogen. So right now, you are seeing vapors coming off of it as the liquid nitrogen recondenses that methane as they get it all conditioned for the test. But also to the left of it right now, you can see some additional vapors coming from the tank farm. So I have updated our status to tank farm activity which means we continue to track towards a static fire test, probably within the next 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 minutes. It's hard to tell. We have our timeline that we go off of from our spreadsheets, but there can always be issues that come up and built-in holds. You saw on Starship SN9's test flight, we were actually at about this point in the countdown when there was a range violation, so they had to pause the countdown, and then they re-entered the countdown about 20 minutes or so later. So there could be pauses, there could be holds. So 20 to 30 minutes is not a definitive time, but once we get that tri-vent, or the 3-engine vent, as they do the engine chill on the 3 Raptors, you will see 3 venting areas around the skirt of Starship SN10, and that is usually just under 12 minutes. So once we see the tri-vent, as we call it, or the engine chill venting happen, that is a pretty firm indicator. Again, it's not rock solid, but that is more firm than the venting we're seeing right now.
Indeed, and I think Brady has just finished up a graphic that will be useful to us today and to everyone on stream as well. We'll get that up in a little while. So, because there's another question here from Turtlefire, who is basically, the question is, how much longer do we have in the window today? And Michael, I believe the last I saw personally was that the window for the road closures went until 6 p.m. CST, so about 45 minutes mark right now from current. Is that correct, or have they extended that at this point?
So right now the road closure says till 6 p.m. I have a notification system. If the website changes, I will know, but right now it's still 6 p.m. We have seen SpaceX on numerous occasions blow right past that, so they've likely already communicated that they're going to need more time with the county, and the county's probably said, yeah, sure, you can test past the 6 p.m. time. And usually they get a couple of hours, so probably something like 8 or 9 p.m. as a new deadline for testing tonight, but getting a short extension is not too big of a deal. So just because the road closure on the website is not updated yet does not mean that SpaceX has not communicated with the county that they want more time. Just sometimes takes time for the person at the county to go in and update the website.
Gotcha. So yeah, we'll be looking for that, but be looking for that extension, but not right now. But again, we'll see as they proceed down toward the 6 p.m. local time. And for everyone around the world, 6 p.m. local time, we've got the clock on the screen. It's about 45 minutes from now, but it's also about it's also midnight UTC. Is 6 p.m. Central Time here in the U.S. All right, we have a question here. What will the thrust be today? That is one of our wonderful jokes. The thrust is 3. We have 3 engines today that will be tested. 3 Raptors, so the thrust is 3 for today. And again, we're looking at that. We'll see what the exact timeline is, and if we get any updates per static fire timing, we will definitely let you know as we go through today. So here's a good question. What is next after SN10? Is it SN11, or are they skipping a few? Can't recall. And Steven, I don't know about you, but there's so much to keep track of at Boca Chica that I agree with that last sentiment. I can't recall, except yes. I can actually recall the answer to this question, or I would not have put it up on screen.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I do remember what comes next, but I can totally concur that it's very hard to keep up with what's going on. If you blink, you will be completely out of date with your information.
Indeed, like I was reading the article that Chris wrote this morning that we have on screen, which is on screen, that we have published live on our website, NASASpaceflight.com. It's the lead article right now, which is the current state of Starship affairs in Boca Chica, Texas. We try to do this every week when there's a lot to sort of wrangle together. But one thing, when I was reading the article this morning before it went on, and I got to the point where they were talking about Super Heavy Booster 2, and I was like, didn't know we were building sections of number 2 yet. So yeah, I mean, you learn. I mean, even us, like every day, like it's having these recaps is healthy and very helpful. Healthy. Well, I guess it's healthy
too. Yeah,
it's
a good snack while you eat real food.
Exactly right. Who doesn't love some methane and the liquid methane in the morning? But to your actual question here. So after SN10, there is SN11. It is in the high bay, fully stacked. So it is ready to come down the road to suborbital launch pad B, which is the one that SN9 launched from. After 11, though, is when they skip. So 12, 13, and 14 have all been canceled and either disassembled or their parts are being recycled here and there. So we will skip after 11 to 15. And the reason for that is that 15 has the bigger advancements, moving beyond the current regime of what you see here with SN10. That was basically the same version as 8 and 9, just with their little minor tweaks that were learned. Well, not minor, but the tweaks that were imparted in between the SN8 test flight and the SN9 test flight as well. So yeah, after 10, we do 11, then we skip to 15 for the starships. And somewhere in there, we're also watching what they're going to do with the boosters, because the interesting part now is we're getting to the point where it's not just going to be a straight progression of the SN serial numbers. It's going to be, we're going to start bouncing back and forth between starships which have the SN designation, and the boosters which have the BN designation. So
Now,
it's only
do you
going to get
think-
harder from here to
Yeah.
keep track of it all. But that's why you have us. Yes.
Do you think with SN15 there'll be any noticeable differences, or do you think it's just kind of internal?
Yeah, so there might be some different flaps, there might be some different legs. We kind of talked about this. There might be some more beefed up versions of the thermal protection system. We don't have a firm understanding of what the bigger changes are on SN15 yet, because Elon hasn't really been forthcoming. And sometimes it's unless Mary sees something that has a sign on it that says this is for SN15,
Mm-hmm.
right? The parts can all sort of look the same, so unless we see those specific markers, so it's a little bit hard to say for certain. But new legs could also be a possibility, because we know they're not really happy with the temporary legs right now for
Yeah.
the landing. So could be some fairly significant things, including the way the flaps work and everything. So because we know there are big upgrades coming to that as well.
Right. I know they're working towards doing the thinner steel. Wonder if that's going to come with 15.
Yeah, I don't think we know that for certain. It wouldn't necessarily be out of the question, because we did see part of the testing for SN 7.2, which you can actually see on the lower right hand part of your screen in the LOX vapor cloud that makes it look very dramatic. Although,
Yeah.
once again, Starhopper looks the most dramatic out of all of them.
Yes.
In that previous view. But yeah, it wouldn't be. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that SN15 could have the thinner steel that SN 7.2 was testing, because they are testing those, and we do see them sort of rotate. They build it, they do the test article because they have confidence in it, and the test article is just proving out the computational models of safety. But we've seen them progress and continue building other vehicles with the new material that they've tested in the past. So it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. But again, it's one of those things that until Elon says, hey, here's what we're really working on for SN15,
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, there's still a lot to learn from 10 and 11 too. Especially if 10 is able to nail the landing. For this, it also has a much larger, you can actually see it on this view about halfway up the vehicle. You can see a big black sort of square right on the left-hand side of the vehicle there, because we're kind of looking at it edge on, not head on.
It's kind
But
of
there's
it's
also-
like right in the middle of its belly.
Exactly. And there's a smaller patch just below it. That's a smaller patch of tiles. So this one has a much bigger area of thermal protection tiles. 15 could have that as well. I mean, heck, 15 might roll out with a whole shebang of tiles all over it. Especially depending on what altitudes they're trying to test at as they head uphill. So that so
What are you
sorry,
laughing at?
there's one person in the world who knows why I'm laughing right now, and yes, sorry. Anyway, So anyway, there is that. But anyway, Stephen, if you could take it away for just a
Actually,
minute, or Michael, if you could take it away, I do need to respond to something real quick.
yeah, I have Brady in our back channel has made us a new graphic based on, I think Mark originally made a graphic, and then Brady has made a version of Adrian's spreadsheet graphic that works with our live stream. So take a look at this.
Visualizing data. Here we go.
We'll work. I think what we're gonna do is, as we get robots out there, we can start having robots and presets so that they have like perfectly framed shots for this. But as a temporary solution, we have created a graphic for Mary's current framing. And you can see on the left, that is the timeline for the test. It does seem like, this is the approximate timeline. I should stress that, approximate based on previous test data. It does seem like today's timeline might be slightly behind schedule from what Adrian is telling me right now. But you can see the different steps we're looking at. So we have the recondenser vent at that red area behind the 3 water tanks. We have the upper vent, which is the blue, that is the next, or sorry, the second to next thing. So we should see the skirt vent next, which is the green part. But of course, we see vapors from the tank farm obscuring that area. So you might not see the skirt vent too well from this angle. And then we have the upper tank vent, that is the methane vent that happens as they begin propellant loading. And then we have, of course, the triple engine tri-vent, that is the engine chill, and that happens at 11 minutes and 54 seconds, plus or minus a minute or two before the static fire. So that is a cool graphic that we can use to keep track of the progress. I think that's really cool. Thanks to Adrian, Brady, and Mark for making that happen.
And then those tri-vents, they spurt like one good time, like immediately before ignition, right?
Yep, and
Yeah, about 20-ish seconds or so. I think right before ignition, they'll turn off real quick and then turn back on. Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
so
You guys want to hit some super chats?
Yes, indeed.
for it.
Thank you for giving me that second to answer there. I do want to start with a big one. Robert Hobson with $100 super chat. NSF, Mary, and Starship coverage worth every penny. Thank you so much. That means a lot to us. Thank you. Taylor Van Camp with another super chat. The one who is 3D printing Merlin engines. These Merlin engines are 10 inches. Doesn't know the scale, but they're 10 inches. So there we go. So not full-sized Merlins. Aw.
Yeah, but that's big enough to give you some pretty good detail, I'd say.
That really is. Yeah.
That would look pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big model. Yeah, if 9 of those are actually going to, are you doing a full Falcon 9? Ooh. You do not have to super chat us to answer that. I'm not trying to. A $5 super chat from Mr. Saberson? Sabers?
I think
yes.
Sabers, yeah.
There we go. Yes, thank you. And Stuart Watson with $5, a few extra bot bucks. Ah, yes, the DOS robot army will appreciate it. Yes. So build into trains with a $5 super chat here. Any details about how SpaceX helped out with the turtle conservation efforts during the cold weather? I was wondering if you guys are married, documented it. Do you guys know more about this? I mean, admittedly, I know. I mean, there were major issues because it doesn't usually get this cold in Texas. Sea turtles were freezing to death on beaches. Yeah, and a lot of trouble. And I know SpaceX was one of the big companies out there that was, working to do it in the correct way of picking them up and transporting them inside and getting them into warming areas and sort of warming shelters for the aquatic life that just couldn't handle the temperatures. But I admit that's all I really know about it. I don't know if you or Michael know more about exactly what they did, but I know SpaceX was heavily involved in that.
I don't know for sure. I think that they already started releasing them back, so that's good that they made it through the ordeal.
I think, in fact, Nomad on the NSF forums, he is a local resident of Boca Chica Village, and he was involved with the attempts to save the turtles. don't know if we have his Twitter in chat. Somebody in chat, one of our mods, if they know the tweet I'm talking about, can post up that link in chat to the tweet that he posted with just, hundreds and hundreds of turtles they were taking out to be released into the wild again. So that was pretty cool. I think he said they took them like 36 miles or something offshore to warm water.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one of the things that, I mean, it's one of the many things that just a lot of people just weren't prepared for, right? You don't necessarily think of the impact significant weather like that in a region that's not used to it can have on wildlife. But this really does in many ways highlight very nicely the relationship that spaceflight has really always had to the environment and to these wildlife refuges. And even though Boca Chica is not a wildlife refuge, you look at Vandenberg Air Force Base, you look at Wallops in the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport, you look at the spaceports in Texas and Alaska, and especially the one here in Florida. They're built on or around wildlife refuges because it's perfect. You need to keep people a safe distance away from it for hazardous operations, but you don't need to develop the whole area. It leaves a huge footprint of undeveloped land that's great for wildlife. But that symbiotic relationship, you help out, and you do what you can to make sure that you're there to do the right thing for the wildlife when it needs it. So it was really nice to see all of that happening.
And it's really,
again,
it's really cool when we get to go on base and like going to set up remotes or something and driving across the base, and like you'll see wild boar and alligators and deer, and I've seen several bald eagles. There's a big, if you've ever been down here and been to the visitor complex, gone on the tour, they usually point out this really big old bald eagle's nest that's there, and I can't remember how long it's been there, but it's been there for a very long time, and been used by several generations of eagles.
Yeah, exactly. And Jack, I just want to shout out to Jack, to Jack, our Jack, who was giving me a bit of a correction there. I did not realize Boca Chica is a wildlife refuge. So just like the Florida spaceports and the others, Boca Chica is a wildlife refuge. And someone actually linked up the tweet from Nomad that we were talking about. So 1,500 turtles that people in South Texas, including SpaceX employees, rescued from freezing temperatures. They were kept warm by generators supplied by SpaceX, and then a team of people brought them 35 miles offshore to 61-degree Fahrenheit water, so ideal for them. So a huge effort in South Texas there. And Mary also saying many SpaceXers helped pick up turtles. Power was out on South Padre Island for several days. SpaceX brought sea turtles. SpaceX brought to Sea Turtle Inc. on South Padre Island a large generator to provide power. So there you go. That's all of everything that was done there to sort of answer that question about what happened, because it was intense there.
Yeah, and back to the test at hand, we're not seeing the normal vapors from the base of Starship SN10 that we should be seeing if they were to be commencing propellant loading operations. So I think that timeline we've been talking about is probably out the window right now until we see the next event happen. So they probably, if they are going through the same timeline they did with SN9, that means they probably are working a hold of some sort. It could be a different timeline with SN10. We don't know. They could make changes, but definitely right now, some sort of something different is happening than what we've seen previously. So either a hold or a different testing sequence. But once we see propellant loading start and the methane vent happen, that would be another reference point that we can use to potentially see if they're going to be resuming the count, assuming that they have held. But again, the current events are not unfolding as you would expect them to if they were counting down as they have on the previous test with SN9 and SN8. So stay tuned as you wait to see what happens.
And Michael, do we have the weather overlay we can pop up real quick just to show how things have rebounded since last week there?
No, we do not have weather right now.
We do not have weather right now. Okay, cool.
No weather. We're going
no weather.
But I don't
That's
think
how the weather's doing.
I don't think there is any weather that I have seen in the area. It looks like clear skies right now. Oh, we do. Oh, you mean that overlay? I thought you meant like
yes, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay, my bad. I thought you meant like the super fancy broadcast TV weather radar that we
Oh
sometimes have done.
no.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah.
Oh,
I just wanted people to see, like, I mean, because last week we were talking about temperatures of 0 degrees, 0 to -2 degrees C, 32 into the 20s Fahrenheit. Down there, I just wanted to show people how well it's rebounded. We've seen them test in this kind of weather before, because I'm preempting a question about has the cold weather affected the fueling process. Not in this regard, because we've seen them fuel and test in this type of weather conditions before in these temperatures. So that is not having an effect on why we're seeing something different unfold tonight.
See, I was hoping for the weather graphic where we have Chris G in front of a green screen pointing
Oh, that doesn't
at
end well.
different temperatures.
And then
Here we have
like, here, what? I don't know. Left
68
shoulder, right?
degrees Fahrenheit. What?
But yeah, go ahead, Tom. Sorry, go ahead,
I was
Mike.
just saying quickly, the tank farm just kind of spooled down. I'll go back to Mary's camera, and you can see just the recondenser right now, but the actual rest of the tank farm is kind of petering out, so we'll keep watching it. But I had to guess. I was a betting person. I would place money on a hold right now, or potentially an abort. But as you know with Starship, any type of betting involving Starship is never a good idea. So I'm not actually going to put anything of physical value on the line. But it does seem to me like they may be at least holding or potentially aborting. But we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
John Wallace, thank you so much for the new membership. Very much appreciate that ongoing and continued support. That really does help us. And all the memberships, your super chats, as well as simply watching the ad. As annoying as ads are, I know I hate ads and I can't wait to skip them. But just simply watching an ad like that is also a huge support to us as the Boca Chica Air Force goes by.
Wow. Bird.
Birds fly like so perfectly that there was a moment there where it was like, is it just one bird and like the image is just hiccuping? Because like, wow, they're hitting the same points there.
Yeah.
But the magic of flight.
You didn't see the Elon tweet about the new range security?
Right?
And Mary just said in our back channel that was pelicans flying across there.
There we go. The Boca Chica Air Force. Yes.
Yep.
But yes, so thank you for all the various ways that everyone supports us. It really does mean a lot to us. So Maxwell was asking with a $5 super chat saying, loved seeing your faces on the Perseverance broadcast. Any chance you'll incorporate your live cameras into future Starship tank watches? I know that's not something we normally do when we have people on the ground, just to keep everything as focused on the technology as possible. I have that right, Michael? We tend to do cameras.
The main reason is these broadcasts, as we hopefully won't see today, but as they often play out, they end up stretching for many, many hours, and it's not fun to have a camera in your face for that long. So that's part of it. It's also, it's another thing that go wrong. These broadcasts are pretty complex, especially on the equipment we're using. We're not using, tens of thousands of dollars worth of broadcast equipment, switchers, and all kinds of fancy stuff. We are a small outlet with minimal resources, so we try to do as much as we can with the limited resources we have, and personally, I'd rather we have, 5 or 6 camera feeds of Starship than 3 camera feeds of Starship and 3 camera feeds of people's faces. So there's a trade-off there, I think, but the main reason is that it is a long time to have a camera pointed at your face when you want to be eating and getting up to go to the bathroom, and you know how it goes on a long Starship stream, Chris. But in my opinion,
yes.
In my opinion, for a Perseverance stream or something where we know the landing will happen or the confirmation will come in at 3:55 p.m. Eastern on February 18th, no matter what, unless there's like a telemetry blackout or blah, blah, blah. But high confidence that Perseverance was going to have at least something happening at that time. So that made sense to have cameras on. And you get to see Chris G do a circle around his room in excitement. And you get to see Steven react to
I think I
the
was
Tango
punching the air.
Yes.
Yes, yes. Maybe the balance here is that I'll just locally record my reaction to Starship SN10's flight, and we can go from there.
There you go.
Because yeah, I'm not sure my reaction last week when the landing confirmation came in for Perseverance, and this is Mars. It's tangentially related, and I'll keep it brief. I'm not sure my reaction then was any different to that watching that video the thousands of times I have watched it today of the onboard landing.
It was incredible.
Which is incredible. Yeah. I mean, talk about goosebumps of excitement there.
Yeah.
That was just absolutely incredible. But yes, and hey, one day we'll get video of Starship doing the same thing. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. Here's a good question. Let me see what we've got here in terms of Starship. There's okay. So Thomas with a super chat here asking, honest opinion, chance of a successful flight. Ooh, I could be cheeky and say, what do you mean by successful? But I won't be. I know what you mean by that. I still wouldn't personally be surprised if SN10 doesn't perfectly stick the landing. Do I think they'll get a lot farther this time? I very much hope so. But one thing that we do want everyone to continuously be aware of is that this is very much a test program, right? And SN8 and SN9 and the Raptor's performances on the initial ascent and climb and both SN8 and 9's control stability during the belly flop were phenomenal. Does not mean that in an early test program sequence something still can't transpire in there that renders the end of the test of reigniting the Raptors moot, right? So I want to be very upfront and forthcoming with that is still a huge thing, right? These are not the flight-worthy Raptors that will be the ones chugging and going away when Starship is an operational vehicle. These are still very much developmental sets of engines. Even though they're very good developmental sets of engines, there's still the possibility that something can go wrong with them. So, what are the chances of a successful flight? I personally, I think they're about the same as SN10. When you factor everything in. I'm sorry, SN9. When you factor this is SN10 that we're looking at. When you factor everything together, I think the chances are very similar to one another. But like with all of them, I think the chances are more in the favor of success than they are in learning something from it slamming into the ground again.
Every test flight.
That's how I would answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, it moves closer towards success, I think, with every test flight. I mean, I know there's a lot of new space fans since the days. I mean, it was only a few years ago, but the days of Falcon 9, just learning how to land. But if you were around during those times, you remember how excited you were for the next flight because you knew they were going to try to do the landing again. But there was a few of those. I mean, I want to say it was like 4 or 5, I think, landing failures before they ever stuck the landing. But it still continued, and with each landing that didn't end in success, they learned from that and they applied it to the next one until finally they had it refined enough that, actually, Cape Canaveral at the time, Air Force Station, allowed them to try a landing on land, and that was actually the first one that they stuck. And then, if I remember right, the next attempt on a drone ship was not even the first successful one. It was, I think, 2 more attempts before they actually landed successfully on the drone ship.
I know they landed the first time successfully in the drone ship on a CRS flight. I believe it was April after the December landing. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there were a couple that didn't work on. I think
it was after that. It was after the one successful on the land. I think it was Jason 3, the one that actually landed, but one of the legs got kind of messed up. And then it ended up falling.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a
This
lot
is
of close ones in that area. Yeah.
right, right. So it's kind of like that because as we're watching Starship, it seems to be going up and coming down pretty well. It
Hmm.
kind of seems like they've got that part down. It's just that last like 5% of the flight that they're just having to refine and hone in before they finally start sticking the landings. And then even
And
once they do stick a landing, there's no guarantee that they will stick every landing thereafter.
well, exactly right. And you see some of that with the Falcon 9, right? Falcon 9's very reliable at their landings, but every once in a while there's something that pops up, right?
Right.
And they have to go investigate it, and they have to go look at it, like what's happening right now after the landing issue on their last mission, which was which was one of the Starlinks. I'm not even going to try to remember which one it was. I'm just going to say one of at this point.
It was one of them.
Yeah. Oh, and we see some more activity happening there now. Michael, is that the Recondenser firing back up, or just more tank farm activity?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the Recondenser, but it's hard to tell with that wind direction kind of blowing the rest of the tank farm towards the Recondenser. So it's hard to tell exactly how much is coming from what, but definitely a bit of both mixed in. And if we go back to the other camera, you can see there's still no vapor coming from the underside of SN10's aft skirt right now, so I don't think there's any signs of propellant loading yet. We're still waiting for that to happen. Hopefully it won't be long, but if I go back to this camera, you can also see a vent in front of Starhopper right now.
Oh yeah.
If you're new, Starhopper is that silver tank to the left of Starship SN10, which is, of course, SN10 is the tallest vehicle on your screen. Starship SN10 was the first prototype Starship vehicle. It conducted 2 test flights to 18 meters and then 150 meters, both successfully. It is the only Starship prototype to date to fly twice, so that is kind of cool.
And live to tell the tale.
Yeah.
So a good question here based on the SN9 landing event. A question that we got here was, did we ever determine if SN10 was hit by any of the debris from the SN9 landing? Footage looked like no, but we also saw things flying around. I believe the answer to that is no, correct, Michael? SpaceX did not say it was hit, and we didn't, from all the photos and videos that we have of SN10, we have not seen any damage or seen them doing repairs on it, correct?
Sorry, I was typing something in our back channel. Which Starship?
On SN10, after SN9's landing, we didn't see them like
Oh, yeah, yeah.
repairing SN10 because it got hit. It didn't get hit. We
I
don't
don't
think.
think so. I don't
Yeah.
even think SN7.2 got damaged, from what I could tell. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even think. I know they resurfaced the entire landing pad and they extended the landing pad, so they definitely did a lot of work on the landing pad since SN9's flight. But even from the aerial images that Jack and Mary got after the test, I don't. Or did Jack and Mary go? I can't remember if Jack and Mary went on a plane after or if it was RGV aerial, but somebody got aerial photos of the pad after the test and there was minimal damage, so I don't think even though SN9 came in quite hard, it didn't seem to really do any damage.
And I'm trying to find an answer to this because I know Chris B tweeted it and had some conversations about it, because there's a good question here from Hank asking how long will it take for that concrete that they poured at the landing pad yesterday to cure and be ready for launches, and do we know? I know Chris asked concrete experts on last night, and I'm trying to find the answer because someone answered.
It seems like the answer we got was Elon saying that it might fly this week, and
Well,
it was
yes.
like, well, I guess that's enough time. but other
That
than
is
that,
very
I
true,
don't,
yes.
I don't remember.
But no, I do know he asked specifically, so I'm just trying to find that real quick. But Stephen, sort of to that end, while I'm trying to find that, Can you talk a little bit about what your impressions have been, either with this testing or if you can see some other questions that you want to grab? Either
Oh,
way,
sure.
but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's I hate to say it, but it's probably the most exciting thing going. You know, it's on the ground anyway. You know, we have Perseverance on Mars, but um, I mean, you know, it's the coolest thing. We get to actually see this test campaign. I think it's super awesome, and I can't wait for each flight. It's so cool.
Yeah,
Um, eh, yeah, go ahead, Michael.
I was not going to add anything interesting other than saying that video they posted today was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and I was going to say earlier that that video was the only thing I felt like I was missing when I watched Curiosity Land back in 2012. It's like I would just wish I could have seen an actual video of it, and now we have it.
And
Um,
the generalized answers to the concrete question was basically 4 to 5 days with different additive mixtures and surface hardeners.
oh,
So
okay,
yeah,
that's
so
not too
this week,
bad.
and then Elon said this week, so that's about right. From yeah,
And of course, I don't know what after 3 days, maybe it's mostly cured, but not ideal. Basically, what I'm saying is I'm not sure if they could potentially push that limit a bit. We'll have to see how it plays out, but definitely not a multi-week delay.
I wonder if it's possible to like put heaters out there or something to speed up the process, or if it just has to take time.
I think
Yeah,
outside of the heart, yeah, the like different ways you could do it, yeah, it's just a time factor
Yeah.
element. But another good question here from Emil, asking, official renders show heat shield tiles on both sides of the forward flaps, but only the belly side of the aft flaps. Any idea why? So yeah, so we've had some questions about this in the past about like why might you need thermal protection system on the the side of your aero surfaces, the aero flaps, when they're not going to be taking the brunt of the force of reentry heating because they're folded up still, right? But one of the tricky things about atmospheric reentry, and all the little gaps that you have because of those hinges there, right, is how the plasma actually begins to flow around the vehicle, as entry interface is happening and as the vehicle is breaking apart the air molecules in front of it because it's moving so fast, right? As it's
Well, one
compressing, well,
example.
as it's
Uh,
compressing the air in front of it. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
well, one example is like as you watch Falcon 9 ascend through the atmosphere, you
Hmm.
know, it's shooting exhaust out the back, but sometimes you see little bits of flame up above the engines, you know, in that little
hmm
area up there. So it's sort of like that. Like it's not always it's not always intuitive where the
Hmm.
fire is going to be, right?
Exactly, because you have all these little things, right? As it's flowing around, your vehicle model's telling you you're going to get plasma impingement onto them, or you're going to heat them, not necessarily because the plasma is hitting them, but you're just going to heat them a little bit more than you would necessarily be comfortable with if you just left it the bare skin,
Right.
right? So, and this worked the same way too on the shuttle, which re-entered with aero surfaces and everything. The tops of its aero surfaces were still covered with thermal protection system, to help protect it, in those various ways. So it's not overly surprising to see renders and to see potential ideas that SpaceX is working on for those sides of the aero surfaces, basically.
Right.
Well, meanwhile, not much change in action at the pad. I know I see people in chat are obviously asking when hot, because that is the question everybody wants to know, but the current temporary flight restrictions start tomorrow, but without a static fire as we approach 6 p.m. Central Time today, I don't think a launch attempt tomorrow is going to happen, and I'm not aware
Well,
of any, marine hazard warnings going out or village evacuation notices going out. So I think a launch attempt tomorrow is pretty much out of the question at this point. But hopefully we'll see a static fire this evening. However, that being said, I mean, not a whole lot of activity at the tank farm right now, so we're going to have to see how it plays out. I do have a road closure tomorrow if they need it for the static fire, so they could static fire tomorrow if they have to. But
Well,
until the
and that
static
kind.
fire,
Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done, Michael. My apologies.
the final thing I was going to say is before the static fire, until the static fire happens, the answer to wind hop is always pretty much I don't know. So one step at a time, and once the static fire happens, we might have a tiny bit of a hint as to when the hop will happen. But like with all things in Boca Chica, nothing is happening until it happens.
Indeed, and I'm going to get back to some super chats and questions as well. But Novacon did have a good question here, Michael, because you said you were saying that there are road closures tomorrow if they should need them for the static fire. Technically, as far as we know, there's about 6.5 minutes left in our window tonight, correct? Unless there's been an extension to the road closure that just hasn't hit the Cameron County website at this point.
And you can see right there, that is our road closure graphic, which does update live with the Cameron County website. So no extension to today's road closure yet, but that does not mean that SpaceX has not asked for it, as I mentioned earlier. Sometimes, you know, it's probably one person at the county who's in charge of updating that website, and it may not be that they're sitting at their desk when the request comes through. So just because the road closure website has not been updated yet does not mean that SpaceX cannot test past 6 p.m. We're going to stay live until the roadblock itself, the physical roadblock. Once the physical roadblock goes down and a road is officially open, that's a sign that there's no more testing today. But as long as the road stays closed, we will stay live and we're seeing a depress event right now, so that is not a good sign. I'm going to remove our timeline. That is an indication of a potential abort. I mean, to be honest, we never want to keep people around. This is not looking promising right now, but we have been at a status before where it seemed unpromised. It seemed, you know, not a good indication that the pad, and then the static fire happens 2 hours later. So what I'm saying is, if you really want to see the static fire, don't go anywhere until the road reopens. But right now, based on what we're seeing at the pad, things are not looking promising for a static fire today. The road closure window is ending. Could it be extended? Possibly, but until the road opens, we'll stay live. But again, this is not the signs you want to be seeing that are happening right now.
Exactly, and while we wait for some more official signs or clearer signs of what might happen and what the path forward might be, I did just want to thank Alex Shrimpton for the new membership. Keysify, thank you also for the new membership. Very happy and very grateful for that recurring support. Aresh with a $50 super chat saying thanks guys for all that you do. Thank you very much. And Andrew Donald with a $25 Australian super chat asking, I read that the FAA has closed out the anomaly investigation into SN9, but it said that SN10 flight approval was waiting on further unspecified actions. Any ideas about what the FAA still wants? So there could be a couple. There are likely a couple of things with this. One, closing out the anomaly investigation is good. It means that, and to be fair here, right, this is part of the FAA's general oversight. And anytime anything happens on a commercial flight side, whether it is space or airplane related, the FAA has an oversight for that investigation to aid that investigation. So it was totally normal, even though it was a test flight and we knew that was a likely outcome. Still very much normal that the FAA would conduct would oversee an investigation. That investigation's closed out. So closing out the investigation on SN9 doesn't automatically mean the FAA will grant a launch license to the next one in the queue. So there are the remedies that SpaceX is putting into place, which include the ignition of all 3 Raptor engines at first on the reignite for the flip and burn landing. And then shutting one of those down after you can confirm you've got 3 good engines up and running, so that you can shut one of them down because you only actually need 2 for the landing burn. So that could be part of it. We also understand that static fires are a part of FAA approval for final granting of a launch license. So what we are seeing here today and getting through a static fire, we might have that tonight. We might be coming back tomorrow for that. We're still waiting to hear or get some clarification on that. But that would be another important step that would need to be completed before the FAA would grant the launch license for SN10.
The FAA launch license is approved, though, actually. Christian Davenport of the Washington
Oh,
Post
that's right. That's right.
tweeted
That
this
was earlier
morning that it
today.
is approved. So perhaps maybe
There we go.
they're reviewing the data from the static fire. I mean, basically, what it comes down to is every single test that occurs at Boca Chica that is potentially a safety hazard gets reviewed by the FAA. Is that an official review? Is that an informal review? It depends on the case. But the SpaceX static fire, SpaceX launches, everything is being reviewed. That's just the normal process of when you're doing potentially hazardous activities. There are regulators that embed themselves with your operations to make sure that you are operating safely. And as far as we know, all these steps to make SN10's test flight are happening just fine. And the FAA seems like it is on board with the FAA. The FAA seems like it is on board with SpaceX's test flight of Starship SN10. So I do not expect the FAA to hold up the SN10 test flight unless something happens with a static fire or something that has not happened yet, because all the previous actions have been correct.
And case in point to the question we got a few minutes ago of I can't remember was the gist of the question. And see, like even something this morning, like 50 other things have happened since then. So yes, they have the launch license. Yeah, I know. Don't blink. I even retweeted that too. This morning I read it and went, oh, good.
Yeah,
One
good.
hurdle down. But to Michael's question, because I think this plays into it, right? So, okay, there's a launch license, right? But the FAA is still going to be looking at the static fire data that comes out of it and how SpaceX handles the review of the static fire data, much the same way that you can, for NASA crew missions, right? You can proceed forward through a flight readiness review, even if you haven't dotted all the I's and crossed all your T's yet, and there might still be a test firing, like a static fire on the launch pad, right, of Falcon 9 that needs to happen, and you come back in 2 days before liftoff to have your final launch readiness review where you kind of close out all of those final items that weren't quite done when you got your final approval to go launch, basically, is what we're saying the process is once the launch license is granted, which it was earlier this morning. So there you go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being... I don't know what the right word is, but to be honest, my opinion is the SN9 anomaly investigation, the existence of the SN9 anomaly investigation is not news. People should know that that is something that will happen automatically, regardless of if it's SN9, if it's a SpaceX booster landing that fails, like the FAA also confirmed. The FAA confirming that should not be a surprise. Basically, any sort of anomaly that happens during a flight, whether it be a test or not, is going to be reviewed by the FAA, just that they make sure they have an understanding as to the vehicle's performance. The FAA saying that they're investigating something does not mean that they have a safety concern. That means that they just want to understand the system so that if there is something that they don't understand that could be a safety concern, they understand that. But basically what the FAA wants is they want to be kept in the loop. So the fact they said they were going to investigate SN9 does not mean that they saw what happened to SN9 and went, that might be a serious safety violation. No, they just wanted to know why it failed, and if that potential failure could have possibly been a safety problem. But it was not an investigation caused by a strong sense of a safety problem. So long story short, FAA investigations are not something to take too seriously or worry about unless it is something like what the FAA said about SN8's test flight, where SpaceX apparently launched without approval, according to the FAA. That, on the other hand, is different. But, an investigation about an anomaly that's just normal how the FAA works.
Indeed, it is. So here's another good question, sort of going sort of looking a bit into the future, because we've been talking about the Mars landings and everything. So when starships go to Mars, do they require a GPS-like guidance system to land at a specific spot on Mars? This is a great question, right? Great question. So Steven, I want you to
Yes.
think back. I want you to think back to Thursday.
Yes. Thursday. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Something important happened that day. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a minor triumph. No. So when Perseverance was on its way to the Martian surface and it fell out of its back shell and its retro rocket backpack was firing, was that retro rocket backpack firing going, oh my gosh, I need to get to 81 degrees west by 22 degrees north?
No. No. It had what's it called? It had an active guidance system. What do they call it? The
terrain relative navigation.
That's the one. So yeah, so it was literally it was taking pictures of the terrain below it, and it had on board maps already preloaded, and this super smart computer was able to match them up, figure out, okay, this is where I'm at, this is the orientation I'm in, this is roughly where I want to go, and I need to find a flat spot in there. And actually, earlier, if you saw the press briefing, they showed sort of what that map looks like, where they had red areas and then they had green areas or blue areas or something that indicated these are the flat spots, these are the no good spots. And so it's trying to zero in on an acceptable spot that one is flat, but also that it can actually reach with the fuel that it has and the distance that it needs to go to get there. Yeah, there is no GPS, y'all, around Mars. It just doesn't exist. So yeah, it actually has to kind of figure it out on its own with some really smart programming that's already installed. And I think by the time Starship gets there, it's going to be the same story. We're not going to have GPS around Mars for a long time. We've got a lot of infrastructure to build up before we start thinking about GPS around Mars.
Right. And now, to be fair, it is something that is being thought about, as is a global communications network around Mars, much, much larger than what the current fleet of orbiters do.
Right.
But yeah, no, it will be very much the same. The way we get something to Mars is kind of exactly what you just said. We scour and scour and scour and scour from orbit with the imagery assets that we have. And then we sort of select, okay, this is what we think the best area is, but of important note, we've wanted to go to Jezero Crater since the very beginning of when we started sending things to Mars. It has literally been too dangerous to land at that location until the landing systems that we got that could do that instant visual comparison to the ground and go, okay, I'm headed for a giant rock, so I need to go 10 meters to the right. Which is what that system was capable of doing. Starship will be very similar to that, right?
That's really awesome. They've had their eyes on Jezero Crater for so long, and finally they get to go there. And isn't the reason it's like they think that it was like the end, like a river delta? Like there's so much potential for things to have been deposited. If you've ever been to a river delta, there's a lot of life there, lots of different stuff. There's a lot of muck too. There's certain areas, like if you're in a river delta, where you don't really want to go walking around because it's just thick with this sludge stuff, but there's a lot of potential for life to be there. Not necessarily life right now, we're talking about ancient life, but it would have been deposited there and there'd still be signs there. So that's why we want to go there.
Exactly. It's one of the best places for that. And I want to get back to that, but I do just want to update people really quickly because we are still waiting. Obviously, activity has really died down at the tank farm. We have seen the successive depress vents that are the telltale characteristics that they were backing completely out of the process with Starship that they had started earlier. But we are still at this point waiting to see if they have communicated an extension to the road closure, which was supposed to end about 8 minutes ago. But it just because SpaceX requested and the county might approve it doesn't mean it appears publicly on the county's website right away. So we're trying to work out that particular part of what we're seeing here today, because in the past we have seen the county grant extensions to road closure notices and SpaceX be able to get a couple extra hours to come back in and do this. But that is what we are currently That is what we are currently waiting for. We're really not trying to string anyone along. It is entirely possible that they are done for today, that whatever kicked them out of the sequence is not enough to recycle, or the county has not agreed to the recycle. It's also possible that they have. So we're not trying to string you along and just talk about whatever we want to talk about. We're actually answering your questions, which is what gets us off on these conversations. But did just want to update everyone real quick that that's what we are waiting for right now. An hour or so into our broadcast, the voices you are listening to on screen, I'm going to give Michael a second to get this queued up because I did not prep him that I was going to do this, but I figure we'll go back through and show the team. I am Chris Gebhardt, the assistant managing editor of NASA Spaceflight. I am joined by my colleague Stephen Marr. Stephen, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's great. Yes, I'm just the photographer over here, but it turns out that when you like photographing rockets, you pay attention enough to know a few things. I mean, you follow along. You're like, okay, I think I could talk intelligently about some of this stuff.
Well, then I want you on all of our streams, because if you saw through if you're saying all you did was take a photo of the Atlas V launching Perseverance and then you talked about it like an expert on our stream, I want your Superman X-ray vision knowledge transfer thing.
All right. Put me on the spot.
There you go. Also joining us is our producer, and you will hear him from time to time too, answering questions and commentating. Michael Baylor is here with us. Michael, how's it going?
How's it going? And like Chris mentioned, the road is still closed. So while the road closure is officially, according to the county website, supposed to end at 6 p.m., they have, whether they were supposed to or not, extended the road closure past 6 p.m. because the road remains closed as they continue to save Starship SN10. And the next thing we'll see is either crews returning to the pad or the recycle of the countdown. And if it is the crews return to the pad option, we will then see if the road opens or if the road remains closed. But until the road opens, we're going to stay alive because until that happens, there's always a chance for recycle.
Indeed, and just want to hit a little bit more the difference there. So what Michael was saying is the road can remain closed because the road is closed to ensure public safety. But for certain things, like if something at the pad, like if they just need to go out and swap out a sensor or swap out a valve or like swap out something really simple that just gave them a problem here and kick them out, if it's that, right, they will allow SpaceX employees and technicians to go through the roadblock and back out to the pad while keeping the roadblock active for the public. So that's what Michael was saying, is when the SpaceXers go by, we'll be waiting to see if the entire road opens up or if it's just them that's going in. Because if it's just them, that indicates they might just be going out to fix something really quick, and we might have a shot of a static fire later this evening. But you know what? Speaking of, so I just want to run through a couple things here, because Christian with a $5 super chat says, I'll be looking forward to the official Boca Chica Air Force t-shirt in the shop soon in relation to the Pelicans that went by a little bit earlier.
Great idea.
Right. Coming up too. There is a question here from Rough Rider Show. And Rough Rider Show, you are a regular on our stream, so I do want to ask it. Unfortunately, Das is not here to answer the question, but I didn't want you to think that we were forgetting about you because you are a regular on our show. Any update on the Das robot army? Gonna get the cam set up in time for SN8 or SN10. Yep, we're putting together our production elements for SN10's flight now, and stay tuned for that. Because it'll be some good coverage again. But full update on the DOS robot army will unfortunately have to wait until DOS or John, as he goes by, is also is back on the stream with us.
Yeah, I mean, long story short is we have enough equipment down there right now to support a test flight today. If it were going to happen, you can see I can go through them, but all of our different camera angles are up and running.
Oh, look at
today.
that!
So that is
the golden Starship.
Yeah, this camera kind of cheats. I think it makes the sunrises and sunsets look extra good. But
yeah,
we also have Mary's camera with a more realistic at this hour picture of what it looks like down there. But yes, we have 3 camera angles just for a static fire. So if there were to be a test flight today, we could handle it. But of course, we have upgrades that Joss will talk about on a later stream. And we have Jack, who is en route to Boca Chica right now, I believe. So we hope to have a lot of cameras, but we could survive on 3 if we had to.
Go. A CMP Railroad with a $5 super chat. CAMP Railroad, a regular on our show, got the notification you were going live and ran to the front room and put you all on the main TV for the family to watch. Excellent. We appreciate the support. And I loved watching space things with my family and with my dad when I was growing up, and it always means a lot to me that families do that and hearing about that. So personally, from me, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's cool. And actually, tank watching is probably good for conversation.
Right. Right.
You're waiting. You don't know how long you'll be waiting, but you got a beautiful view here, and you can talk to your loved ones.
And hey, if nothing exciting happened and you can't answer the question excitingly, how was your day? Well, just watch a Starship. Oh, here's a good current question from Cookie Cam. Oh, I like that, Cookie Cam. Why does the vent keep coming on SN10? So that's a good question, right? I mean, we think they started propellant loading, but why would they still be venting so many minutes after we saw the initial depressurization vent?
I can guess.
I was waiting to see if Michael was around. Nope.
Oh.
Okay.
So, I can't. Sorry, I'm juggling multiple things at once right now. But
Gotcha. I'll take it then. It's fine. Yeah. I didn't know if you were. I was just trying to spread around who was talking. But yeah, Michael does have a lot of stuff on the back end for production side that he's working on. Yeah, I mean, in basic sense, the first big thing you'll see is the depressurization of the tanks. But then even as you're continuing to drain those tanks, there's still going to be some amount of methane and oxygen that are in your tanks that's boiling off very quickly. So the extra venting is just continuing to purge the tanks of everything that was in them and get them back into either a completely inert state, if that's what they're trying to do, or as close to inert as they can get that's safe to bring people back to the launch pad, or it's just the normal part of getting the vehicle out of its flight condition to open up the pad completely, because we're not going to do anything today. Does that match your guess, Stephen?
that was that there's like a little bit left in there, and it's still going to boil off. And as that pressure increases, you still got to release it.
Indeed. So yeah, that's what we're seeing now from that. But now I do kind of want to hit, because this is, and there are a lot of good Starship questions. And here's one that isn't exactly Starship related, but it's super heavy related, Stephen. Ready?
Ready.
All right. Do you think that booster number 1 will be successful?
Well, okay. So when, so if they're really going to do this thing where they like catch the booster, right? if that's I'm listening.
No, I'm fascinated by that's where you started. I wasn't actually expecting that.
well, okay. So I'll start with the launch. I mean, it seems like they're good enough with the launch part that I can say, yeah, I think that part will go well. It's the recovery part.
Now bear in mind that we're only talking about BN1 here. We're not talking about.
Okay. They're not going to actually try to. They're not going to try to land that. Okay.
No, BN1 will have land it, yes, not catch it.
Okay. So they're going to have feet on the first.
Wow.
If it doesn't turn into just like a tanking test vehicle, but we know it was outfitted to have a couple of Raptors able to be installed on it. Yeah, we're not entirely sure it'll take flight.
Or a flight vehicle or what, but...
Oh, well...
So. I guess that kind of makes the question hard to answer, because if we don't know what it's going to do, how do you define success?
So let me tweak the question to what I think is actually being asked here.
Okay.
With booster number 1, whichever one is the first super heavy booster that has Raptors installed and it leaves the suborbital launch mount, do you think it'll land successsually?
No.
Really, a booster?
It's just so different. It's it's not just Falcon 9. It's it's a lot. I don't know. I mean, what do I know?
Yeah. So I'm going to go the exact opposite of you on this one. I think the booster test campaigns are the far easier element of this, which is why they didn't start with them.
Right. And Elon did say that a while back, that like the reason they start with Starship is because it's the most difficult part. So that
Yeah.
so that does make sense.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, Stephen, like I mean, yeah, I mean it's a different beast, it's a different animal. It's huge. I mean, the booster itself is the entire height of a fully put together Falcon 9, first stage, inner stage, second stage payload variant, and
Right.
that whole thing is just the first stage.
Right.
And it's obviously much wider than a Falcon 9. Like, so I get your point that the handling characteristics of these things are going to be somewhat different.
Right.
I think the biggest thing on a booster would come down to the Raptor's reliability on that one, because I just very like, because to me, like, the booster isn't trying to do this weird flip and burn at the end. It's just going to be,
True.
it launches it downrange on its trajectory, flips around like a Falcon 9, and comes back.
Yeah. So
And
it'll
to
be
me, there's a
basically the
lot of
same.
experience with that.
Mhm.
I wouldn't outright say the first one would be a success, but I would give it a better chance of success than the first Starship we saw fly on
For sure.
on SN8, not the little 150-meter hops that they did.
Right.
Those are easy. If the first Starship to fly does a 150-meter hop and it doesn't land, I'd be immensely surprised.
Right.
I'm still shocked SN5 and SN6 landed.
Yeah.
But with improving that, I think if it does one of those short hops, I think it's a shoo-in for a success.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think it might just be fine-tuning some of the different aerodynamic control elements of just a sheer larger vehicle coming back in and doing that. Landing like the Falcon 9s do, but I think that's going to be easier, and I'd give it a better chance of success than the first.
Yeah,
Starship.
I think with all the clarification, you kind of won me over. So I'm tilting a little more towards. Sure. Yeah, they could probably. It's definitely possible. Unless they run into unforeseen difficulties or something. Yeah,
And I
they
appreciate
could pull.
you letting me use you as the guinea pig of walking through as a way to show, but which first booster flight are we talking
Right.
about? To sort of lay out what the test campaign of them might be.
Right.
But now I want to go back to what you were saying, and I really want to hear your point, Stephen.
Mhm.
Catching this thing with arms on a tower. Before we do that, just want to pop back for a quick status update on Starship, though. We're still waiting. We haven't seen the roads reopen. We haven't seen people going back to the pad yet. Definitely not trying to lead anyone along. We don't know if they're going to be able to recycle today. To do a static fire test, yes, the road closure did technically end from the county's perspective 21 minutes ago. It is, however, possible that SpaceX requested an extension to that, and it just hasn't populated on the county's website yet. So we're still waiting for word on exactly what the plan is for SN10 here tonight. And as soon as we know that, we will, of course, let you know. But because there's still a chance of a static fire, we're staying live for right now until we have a clearer picture. But to that end, and related to Starship, Stephen,
Yeah.
the booster and catching
And
the
the
first
catch.
stage on the on like with the launch tower.
What
What are your thoughts there?
Well, first of all, I honestly, like, after Elon tweeted about that, a friend of mine at work was like, "Yeah, did you hear about that?" I was like, and my honest reaction was, "Oh, that was a joke. There's no way that's true." And now, as has been clarified after the fact, that he was serious about that. And after looking at it, of course, there's some really talented artists out there making some renders and stuff, and it's like, what, that might actually be easier than landing on the ground. You
Or at
you
least
just got
easier
to
than it looks.
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you just got to get yourself lined up with the little arms that are extending out, and then don't come down too hot, because obviously there's going to be some limit to how much force those arms can take. But as long as you come down. And it's probably a little bit of margin, because you've got your grid fins out, and then those arms out, I imagine that there's some margin there of where exactly it can contact those arms. And I
yeah,
think,
the good fins,
I think that I think they can do it. Yeah, I think that will that'll be easier. And then
yeah. I admit once I got the image out of my head of like the tower just reaching out and going, "Come here," and like enveloping it in a hug,
yeah,
and I actually saw some of the renders of like how it comes in and how those little arms just rotate in really quickly after the flamey end has passed them, is when I began to go, oh, I see how this works, and I see how it's just very similar to the precision that the Falcon 9s have when they land on the drone ship or the landing pads at Vandy or at Vandenberg Air Force Base or Cape Canaveral. It's just imagine a structure there now, and instead of the landing legs deploying, the structure just boops two arms out and grabs it.
right.
Before
Which
it
is
hits the
actually
ground.
it's brilliant, because then you save weight of having to have the legs on there.
Yep.
And so you catch it with those arms, and then those arms can probably have a lot more give than what the legs could have. Like we've seen Falcon 9 come down hard and then use up all the crush core, and then we've even seen it where it came down so hard that it like booped the engine on the engine bell on the deck. And but I would say that they can make those arms, it'll be like a shock absorber, like whenever it comes down into the cradle or the arms or whatever, they have some give, and you could have quite a bit of travel there, I would imagine, to absorb any excess velocity. And then the brilliant part is you can put it right back on the launch mount without having to be so precise of actually landing on the launch mount. So to me, it's brilliant.
Exactly, because that was the original idea, right? Yeah, as you were just saying, Stephen, right? Coming back and landing directly on the launch mount, and the thing I could never wrap my head around was not necessarily the precision of setting down like perfectly on that. Like, I mean, because you can throttle something to just because depending on the system you're going to design, right? You could design something to so deeply throttle that you'd basically do what Perseverance did and have a hovering situation right as you came down. It was how you would align yourself with the fueling ports so perfectly every single time. That's the thing I could not wrap my head around. But catching it and flipping it and doing that precise installation makes a lot more sense than trying to nail the landing that way.
And do we know if like the catch will actually be like directly over where the launch mount will be, or will be sort of a rotated, like on the 180 degrees on the other side of the tower? Because I was worried about like the exhaust possibly damaging some of the ground service equipment down there as it's coming down.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is one of those things that's immensely hard to answer until either Elon confirms one way or the other. I have seen people do the renders either way. I think the ones that people are more gravitating to, because I think it does, like you were just saying, it makes the most sense in terms of protecting your hardware and rapid turnaround.
Right.
It basically, you have the launch mount, you have the tower, and completely 180 degree opposite the tower from the launch mount is where the landing mount is. So it would land, and then the structure would rotate at 180 degree, like roll it 180 degrees, like from 9 p.m. on a clock face to 3 on a clock face, right? And set it down on the mount there. But again, that's what I would think is the most logical guess, which is not always the safe assumption with SpaceX.
No.
Because because we're talking about grabbing a rocket out of the sky right now.
A huge rocket, one that dwarfs any of the current operational ones.
Yeah, and I would imagine too that with the Raptors, right, like what you would do is even what some of the animations have shown it coming down a lot faster than it is, because that ability to hover, like deep throttling on your Raptor engines, right? I mean, you're talking a very, very low relative velocity for the reach out and grab. We're not talking about like, here I come at 10 miles an hour, or here I come at 50 miles an hour, grab me, right? We're talking. Oh, Pelicans.
Here goes our Air Force again.
You're talking more about like, and since I started in miles, I'm going to keep using miles. You're talking more like 1 to 2 mile an hour, gentle reach out grab,
Right.
you know, for that. So yeah, a lot remains to be seen on how all that will work, but that's the general idea of where things are right now and how it is. I do want to I do want to get to a really good question. Because we did talk about it very, very briefly earlier, but it's worth pointing out again. So this question comes from Nicholas. Could the hard freeze and the really intense weather that we had in Texas last week have affected structural and mechanical integrity of any part of the Starship? So this is a very, very good question. The answer to which is no. And here's why the answer is just a good no. Because this vehicle has to be able to survive temperatures that are much, 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 much colder when it's in space.
Right.
Likewise, it has to be able to survive temperatures much, 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 much hotter, right? Not just in interplanetary cruise mode or when it's in orbit, but especially, you know, its belly will experience really strong temperatures during atmospheric entries. So the only thing that would have been a huge concern for it, so the temperature alone would not have done it. The only thing that would have been maybe been a concern is rain getting onto the vehicle and then freezing.
Yeah.
Now, this might not be a huge problem because remember, what is Starship? It's a gigantic cryogenic tank. Ice is going to form on the outside of it. It's built to withstand that. So this would be this would be water getting into all the little things that when you're just fueling it and ice begins to condense on the outside, it's not going to get into these little areas, but rain might and rain freeze. That would be the only real thing, but we saw them actuate the flaps and the aero surfaces yesterday. So they've gone through checkouts of this thing. So that's why my answer is no. Same on the ground support equipment side of things. We did hear a lot about pipes bursting across Texas, right? And this has been a huge part of the issues that the state has faced because it hasn't just been water pipes; it's been fuel pipes as well.
Right. Those pipes aren't built to handle cryogenic fluids.
Bingo, Steven, want to take it away? Exactly. That's what I was going to throw to you. Exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, you got to figure we have ice forming on the outside of Starship because it's cryogenic fuel on the inside. So every part of it is built to contain cryogenic temperatures. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine, you know, and then the ice forms on the outside too. So, you know, inside, outside, it's totally used to, you know, being around cold weather.
Exactly. And rockets too can launch in freezing weather conditions. Being below the freezing point is not a constraint for all rockets. It was for some, and it is still for some, but it's not for all of them. Like the Antares that just launched a couple of days ago, and that just the Cygnus that launched the Cygnus that just arrived at the space station this morning. It has a minimum. It has a minimum temperature that it can launch in of 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 6.6 degrees Celsius. So large ranges. So yeah, freezing temperatures in and of themselves are not a concern for rockets. In fact, when we had a really big cold snap several years ago, Stephen, I don't know if you were here, if you had moved to Florida by this point, but
I remember one, and it was in like 2015 or so. It was in like November, and I actually came down to visit a friend for a few days, and it was the coldest Florida had experienced in a very long time. It was like the worst time to come and visit Florida. Yeah.
So we had one shortly thereafter, because the one I'm thinking of is in January.
Okay.
And it was in the 20 degrees Fahrenheit, negative single digit C here, and SpaceX took advantage of that and hauled a Falcon 9 out to the launch pad and fueled it to see what would. In part, they were working through a series of things. They were getting ready for a mission, but they actually sent one out to the pad and did some really, really cold ambient air checks and run-throughs of systems, right?
That's
because
brilliant.
When you can do it in Florida, the rare events that it occurs, you probably want to make sure your systems are going to handle that in case you're ever in a situation where you want to launch like that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah, temperatures can affect, but not in this regard for Starship because it's very much built to withstand those types of temperatures. Now, would they have attempted to launch in or test in those extreme temperatures? That's a different question versus whether the systems would handle it. The systems in the vehicle being able to handle it is one thing, but SpaceX has not yet publicly said what the minimum operating ambient air temperature is for Starship. But remember, it's got to be pretty cold because this thing's going to Mars, and
Right.
Mars is a lot colder than Earth.
Mhm.
So they probably would have. It's just everything else would probably have conspired against them last week to say, no, you can't do it, right? Because Texas was in a state of emergency at that point.
Yeah.
But there was probably nothing from the technical side of Starship to preclude it because it literally has to be able to handle this on Mars in terms of liftoffs. So, Stephen, do you have access to our question queue, by the way?
I do.
You do. Are there any? I did not realize that until this very moment. Are there any that are striking your fancy on here? I have just been usurping this because I didn't realize you had access to it.
No,
but,
it's okay.
Yeah,
Actually,
what's striking your fancy here? Yeah.
Well, you took a couple earlier that, the one about the Boca Chica Air Force I thought was good. Let's see. This is kind of interesting, and I'm not sure if we know. So Ashton Flevel with a 499, is that pounds? Help me out.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Super chat. Will there be less visible frost on Starship due to the cold weather being a closer temperature to the fuel than normal warm Texas weather? Now it's closer, but you do have to remember it's like cryogenic is way down there. What do you think?
Yeah. I get the spirit of the question. Yeah, it is. So it is closer, right? Or rather, it was. The current temperature in Boca Chica is in the mid 60s, upper teens Fahrenheit, centigrade, respectively. We've seen them test in. There we go. It's 64F, 18C.
There it is.
So we've seen them test in these type of temperatures. These are much much warmer. God, this has to feel like summer to most people in Boca Chica right now compared to what they went through last week. What really does affect the frost formation and how prominent it is a combination of the local ambient temperature, the local relative humidity in the atmosphere, and wind speed and direction. Those are the three things that really come together to form that, and their relationship to one another, not so much the temperature relationship to the cryogenic temperatures on the vehicle, which would really honestly be the equivalent of, like, let's say you're on the interstate or the motorway or the Autobahn or whatever highway systems you have in your respective countries. Let's say the speed limit is 80 kilometers an hour, right? Let's just go with that. It's the equivalent of saying, 79 kilometers is closer to the cryogenic temperatures than 80 kilometers an hour, right? It's a really insignificant amount because of how cold these temperatures are. But I think this is a subtle hint from our production team that we're watching tanks in Texas. So maybe you want to head on over and grab your Texas Tank Watcher shirt from NASASpaceflight.com/ Is that that's the new one, right, Michael?
Oh no, that is.
Hang on, I think our link is updated.
We might need a new graphic. I just put up the one I had, but yes, I think whatever's on the store is the latest. So you have to go to NASASpaceflight.com/shop and find out what's available. But I think the dual engine Starship is the current version.
Yes, that will that link will still redirect you to the new one. So that link is valid. Yes, so NASASpaceflight.com/shop, as you see there, and that'll take you over to some of your Texas tank watching gear if you would like some, as well as all of our other stuff that we've got over there as well.
Yeah, dual Starship is current, so we'll get that updated, but with the new link as well. But again, that link does work. The official new shop URL is shop.nasaspaceflight.com, but if you use the old one, it will redirect just fine.
There we go.
There was another super chat I was gonna bring up
Yeah,
here.
go
from Scotland FX with £5. How do the landing legs of Starship deploy? Are they the same as the Falcon boosters? Well, currently, let me see if I can get that up on the screen. Currently, they're folding out from underneath the skirt. Where Falcon 9, of course, the legs are pressed up against the side of the tank, in flight, and then when it comes down, they they open outward. With Starship, as it is right now, they may change the design, of course, but they're tucked up underneath that skirt up there where the engines are, and then right as it gets to the ground, they fold down from the inside. So they're kind of short little stubby things compared to the size of the rest of the rocket, but accomplish the same thing. And they actually have pretty much the same footprint as the tank itself. So there's no like the way with Falcon 9 they spread out, so it kind of there's a little more of a wobble margin, I guess.
More
so
stability. Right.
But yeah, they've got these little. You can actually see with the way they're designed right now. They've got these holes in the kind of posts that go down, and those kind of serve as like crush cores. So it comes down a little too hard, that will give, rather than transferring that energy up into the main structure. But yeah, that's how they work. But we'll change that in the future.
Yeah, and they're definitely going to be changing them. And in terms of the question about in terms of Falcon 9, right? There's a little bit of push right at the very beginning as the legs pop on the Falcon 9, but then it's gravity that brings them down.
Right, yeah.
And locks them down. I don't believe I believe that's also in part how it works with Starship, because it's a very simple way of doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get that reliability into the system. But we know that these legs are temporary, like you were saying, and that they are not. And that they'll be changing here sometime relatively soon. And by relatively soon, I mean relatively soon in terms of Starship's design life cycle, which, as we've said many times on the stream, blink and you miss it.
Right.
So I have one here that's a really cool question, because it is in a large way related to Starship, even though the answer is not Starship. Question here from John. What is the most number of engines that have successfully lit at the same time and made it to orbit? And you correctly say, John, that the N1 never made it to orbit, because that right now is the vehicle that has lit the most number of engines on its first stage for a liftoff, but never made it to orbit. That was the Soviet moon rocket, the N1.
Right.
The answer is 27 on the Falcon 9, if you accept the slight caveat that all 27 engines don't technically light at the same time. There's technically a 200 millisecond stagger. They light in pairs.
Right.
But effectively it's instantaneously. And the spirit of your question is that. So it's 27 on the Falcon Heavy, and Starship will beat it with 1 because it will have 28. Oh, I love this shot. Stay here for a second. Okay, folks. Let's take a tour of Boca Chica.
Welcome to sunsets in Boca Chica.
Right? Okay, so in the left-hand side of your screen, if we start over there, we have the mid-bay, where some starships are born in their initial round of development. You can then see a smaller crane used for some stacking operations, as well as the upper part of the white painted nose cone for the lunar starship, or I personally hope they call it moonship. But we'll see. You can see that right there next to the high bay. The high bay, the big dominant one that you see in the middle. And you can actually see SN11 making an appearance. That big silver line inside the high bay is SN11.
Yeah. There it is.
Yes. You can see 11 there. You can see some of the rest of the production facility and some of the other tents and stacking bays that they have and storage facilities going on over there. Then moving toward the right, you can see a big communications dish.
And we seem to have lost Chris.
The communication just cut out.
Speaking of communicate, yeah, you're back. Speaking of communication dishes.
Speaking of communications, ha 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 ha, laughs nervously and looks at internet connection. Yeah, for some.
There we go again.
Signal, Florida. Well, as Chris was saying, you can see the skyline of the production facility right there with the communication dishes looks like at least one of them is pointed up, so not pointed at Starship right now, as we sometimes see during testing. You can also see these flashing lights on just to the right of the mid-bay. That is the roadblock that is still in effect, so as long as that road stays closed, we will stay live in case they test some more today. But we also have a closer camera that shows a kind of interesting, Steven. You can see that crane is lifting the whatever component that is of a new Starship from the other side of the tents.
Oh yeah. Well, however you got to do it, I guess. Just reach over and grab it.
I don't know if they're going to lift that piece over the tents at some point, but we'll keep that camera on that just in case something interesting happens.
Oh, was that it? It just got like that?
I don't know if they just hooked it up, but when
I saw you looking at it earlier, I was like, is he trying to show us something?
I was interested in what that was, so I'm not sure if they lifted it already, but in case they're going to lift it over the tents, I will keep an eye on that for us. But back at the pad on Mary's camera, still not any signs of more activity yet, but we're going to keep an eye on things. And I mean, teams have not returned to the pad yet, so until that happens, still a chance for test. And even if that does happen, I mean, I guess the road could stay closed and they can fix the problem, but
right.
Definitely a good sign that teams have not returned to the pad yet.
Well, we can try for some questions without Chris G. I'm kind of going off into uncharted territory, but I'm assuming. Yeah. Well, this one I think I can answer intelligently. From Thomas Kelly with 10 euros. Starts off saying, might be a stupid question. There are no stupid questions. How much propellant weight is used in the first 100 meters? Could they save on weight by launching from a higher altitude from a platform 100 meters off the ground? I can't tell you how much, like what the weight is of the fuel they use in that first 100 meters, but it's not so much about using that fuel to get a certain to a certain altitude off the ground. You're trying to build up velocity. So regardless, you're still probably going to use basically the same amount of fuel, regardless of how high up you are. I mean, I don't know if launching from the top of a mountain might make a difference because you have less air to push against. But I think when you're just talking about 100 meters or so, I don't think that's going to actually make any kind of a difference on the amount of fuel that you need.
It's and I'm back, Stephen. You said that perfectly.
Okay.
It's very negligible because exactly like you said, it's about velocity.
Right.
So it helps a little bit, but what actually helps you more with velocity is being either closer to the equator if you're trying to launch more equatorially, lower inclination orbits, and it helps to be closer to the poles if you're trying to go polar, because you can use Earth's velocity to help you.
Right.
In that regard. But yeah, 100 meters isn't going to make a big difference, is going to make negligible difference.
Right. And that whole thing, I don't know, people might be interested in how that works with launching close to the equator versus, well, why is that any different from launching from the North Pole? Well, if you I might be showing my age here, but if you take a record and you put the record on a turntable, you'll notice.
Okay, so kids are.
Well, listen here, there, Sonny.
Yeah. A record is one of those things you see in movies and TV shows from the 60s and 70s of how they listen to music.
Right.
Also, I still love records and listening to them, so
exactly.
I'm not one to talk. Yeah.
Well, music fans, like hardcore music fans, will usually attest that a record sounds better than any sort of format that we have ever invented since, But anyway, to get back to the point, if you pay attention, the center of that record is not really moving very fast. Yes, it will rotate just as many times, like as the outside of the record, as one rotation, the whole thing will rotate, but it's covering less distance to make that rotation. Whereas if you move towards the outside, it's having to move faster to complete that one revolution. So in the same way on the Earth, if you're up at the North Pole, you're going around very slowly. But if
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
cars. I literally just brought back the timeline, and I was gonna have it at the
Oh.
at the top, hoping that something would happen. But as you can see from that camera, we just saw a car drive across Mary's screen, which is not the sign we were hoping to see. I am going to see if we can pick up that camera
So
or that car on the other camera, but there it is.
And Mary is also saying in our back channel that the road is open as well. So definitely not a good sign for a test tonight.
I mean, it's a scrub. If
It's a scrub.
Open.
Yeah, because the road's open. Okay, so it is a scrub, yeah. And unfortunately, it is a scrub. I do kind of want to finish answering Steven's question really quick, because you were hitting the nail right on the head there.
Yeah,
that rotation, so if you think of the disk as Earth's equator, and you think of the center of it, like you were saying, as the pole, and you think of the edge of it as the equator, if you're trying to go equatorially and you launch in the same direction that the disk is spinning, you automatically gain all of that velocity. So it makes it easier to go to orbit. That's why if you try to turn sideways and get into a retrograde orbit, it takes a lot more energy, because you have to first counter everything Earth has given you, and then do the whole 7.8 kilometer per second acceleration after that.
It's roughly 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, right?
It is. It's quite significant. But the exact opposite is true. When you want to go polar, the closer to that center you are, the closer to the pole you are, the less of Earth's rotation you have to negate to get into a polar orbit. That's why you see Vandenberg higher up, and that's why you see Alaska and New Zealand as the polar preferred launch locations, right? Polar, you try to get closer to the pole. Equatorially, you try to get as close to the equator. It's just all about maximizing what Earth gives you to work with.
And I think that was Jack chiming in there for like a split second to say hard disagree. And I think that might have been what
I heard someone join to say hard disagree. Yeah.
I was like, wait, what did I say? And I get what he was saying. I wasn't really factoring in if you were actually trying to launch a polar mission. I was just trying to paint a picture in your mind.
No, exactly. And I did just want to finish that conversation, because we did say we didn't want to string people along, and it is very clear that it is a scrub for tonight. The road is open. You're watching multiple cars go through. So there will be no testing tonight. So this would move static fire at this point to tomorrow. And Michael, do we have the road closures or what they currently are on the county available real quick? So tomorrow, yes. So theoretically, as long as Mary gets a notice later tonight that they are going to attempt static fire tomorrow, which we'll watch Mary's Twitter account for her to let us know that notice has been received, could take place anywhere between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. local time, which is Central Time. So add 6 hours to that for your UTC time. So that is... I just said it. So that is 1500 through midnight UTC tomorrow, if you know your time zone in relation to UTC. So that's what we're potentially looking at tomorrow. Again, temporary flight restrictions were up for tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, which is the first sign that the FAA is working, but we don't see any of the other things. And obviously, without a static fire tonight, tomorrow is off the table for a flight opportunity. So we will continue to monitor that, but that is the current state of affairs. No testing tonight at Boca Chica. And Michael, do we have any? What do we want to?
Don't go yet. We have one more thing.
Right. Don't go yet. Just...
Watch this.
Bam.
Yes, Boca Chica Air Force. There you go.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That is brilliant. I love that. I need to go get that right now. But so shop.nasaspaceflight.com if you would like your Boca Chica Air Force t-shirt with the Pelicans. I do have to give a shout out to my significant other, because part of her stories to me is that her mom always used to call the Pelicans the Air Force. So that's why I just said it that way. So
that's cool.
Need to give a shout out there for where that came from. But
I
if you
believe
want
on the shirt.
I
think on the shirt it even has Starhopper's glowing eyes.
It does.
No, you cannot
Starhoppers.
I need a bigger image, but you cannot see it. Those are actually not lights. Those are sunglasses that Starhopper is wearing.
I love it. I love
even
it
better.
even more.
I hope they're aviators.
They are, I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So Michael, I think does that do it for us, or do we have anything
Yes.
else for today? Alrighty. So that is going to do us. That is well, it's going to do it for my brain, because I'm reaching apparently the point where I can't talk anymore. So that'll do it for the NASA spaceflight team today. We will be back whenever SN10 does attempt a static fire tomorrow. So do pay attention to that all important ding notification that we have gone live on YouTube. Make sure you have that turned on. We don't go live for weird things. Every time we go live, it really is something important that we think you'll want to see. So we don't spam you in that way. So make sure that notification is turned on so you get it. And let's go around the horn one more time. I am Chris Gebhardt, the assistant managing editor of NASA Spaceflight. I can be found on Twitter at @ChrisG_NSF. That is me posing in front of a rocket. I was joined today by my wonderful colleagues, including Stephen Marr, who is one of our absolutely fantastic photographers down here, and you can find him over at SpaceCoast_Steve. Pay attention to the spelling of Steve there.
He's also a professional live stream host. I don't know if anybody else can
Yes.
tell, but Steve has been doing this for decades. He is extremely experienced. He's a natural. And we hired him as a professional host. The photography was just a bonus, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And that is Steven in front of another rocket, posing with another rocket. There's a theme happening here, if you can't tell.
He's a natural.
Yeah. But Steven, thanks so much for joining us, man. It was awesome having you on the stream to talk Starship. Hopefully, maybe when they fly again, if they test a little later this week, maybe we can have you back on if schedules align.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, tomorrow. If we do a static fire tomorrow, then I should be able to be on. And then we'll see how the rest of the week plays out.
Awesome.
Welcome back anytime, I think. I mean, I don't see why chat would not agree, because you are very good at this, and it's always good to have more people, because these streams can take many, many hours, and sometimes we start losing our voice because it takes so long, but more help is always appreciated.
Yeah, for sure.
Indeed, and that other voice you heard was our next person, was Michael Baylor. He is one of our producers extraordinaire. He is also posing with a rocket, though on a different coast than Stephen and I were on.
The better coast, to be clear.
Well, no, never mind. I'm just not going to comment and move on. Michael does so much for us. All of the work that you see with the productions, a lot of that work is his. A lot of that work is Doss's as well. You also know him as John Galloway. But yes, Michael, thank you so much for today and everything that you do. You can also check out his app, which is Next Spaceflight, which has a lot of NSF's articles. In fact, you can find our latest articles on there, as well as a whole host of information on upcoming launches and space-based events. And he can also be found at Next Spaceflight on Twitter. And finally, she did not speak on camera tonight, but she was out there all the same, giving us this incredible image of Starhopper just illuminating the test site. As always, Mary at Boca Chica Gal on Twitter, Starship person extraordinaire. Thank you so much for not just having all the live stream gear out there for the aborted static fire attempt, which I know you will be out there again tomorrow for it, but also for the full day you also put in documenting everything that went on around Boca Chica today before getting set up for this. Thank you so much. In fact, the latest daily video is out if you want to head on over to our YouTube channel. Well, you are on our YouTube channel, so when we're done, just look at some of our other videos. I forgot what we broadcasted to there for a moment.
And somebody in chat reminded me, before you head out, press that like button.
Yes, indeed. Please hit that like button on our channel. And until tomorrow, when the next attempt for SN9 static fire will be, this is the NSF crew signing off for today. We will be back with you tomorrow and later on in the week for some other exciting stuff. Have a good night, everyone.
Chamber pressure looks good. Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Water towers, fly!
bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.